Hello, I'm Steve Hounsell, Chair of the Ontario Biodiversity Council. Our 2021 Ontario Biodiversity Summit, Nature-Based Solutions for the 21st Century, has finally come to a close. We hosted 16 webinars spanning the period from late May through to mid-October of 2021. It was a significant undertaking. I'd like to thank all of those who have worked so hard to make this summit a success. To our sponsors, session leads, and moderators, to our excellent presenters, and to all of you who have attended one or more of the 16 webinars offered in our virtual summit. And a special thank you to our support team and the Invasive Species Center for their use of their webinar platform for our summit series. Just so you know, all of our summit webinars have been recorded. You can find them at our website, ontariobiodiversitycouncil.ca. I encourage you to watch them. There is a wealth of information from leading experts from across Canada and indeed the world. Before I offer a few high-level remarks about the summit, I'd like to respectfully recognize and acknowledge the lands where we reside and from where we work. Since time immemorial, the Indigenous peoples were self-reliant and well provided for through their own ingenuity and use of the gifts of the land, living in harmony with the balance of nature. We, the Ontario Biodiversity Council, acknowledge that the land we meet on and strive to protect is the territory of the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and Ojibwe Chippewas people, but now is home to many diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. That is also true for the many people participating in our summit who may be residing in unceded lands. I'd also like to recognize the critically important role of Indigenous peoples in conserving biodiversity as teachers of traditional knowledge, for promoting and enlightening us on two-eyed seeing and ethical space, and as valued members of the Ontario Biodiversity Council. If we have learned anything over the past number of months, I hope it pertains to the need for reconciliation and the imperative to work together with compassion, empathy, and equity for a much better future for all peoples, including the lands, waters, and air that sustains us, which includes the rest of life on Earth. We started this summit in late May of this year. Our purpose was to reach out and connect people from across Ontario and Canada to talk about, celebrate, and most importantly, take action to protect biodiversity, address climate change, and advance nature-based solutions for a more sustainable future for all. We wanted to draw attention to the alarming state of biodiversity at multiple scales, including from here in Ontario, and the absolute need to bend the curve on biodiversity loss as we work towards a nature-positive world and pursue a new deal of people living in harmony within nature. Indeed, our collective future very much depends upon this. We also made it clear that biodiversity is an issue that is intertwined both in causation and in solutions with climate change and the pursuit of sustainable development goals, and hence our focus was on nature-based solutions. We were seeking practical nature-based solutions that would achieve multiple wins for biodiversity, for climate, and for people, leading us all towards a more inspired future for all. Remember, the future is all about choices, choices that we collectively make. We desperately need to make nature-positive choices. I think we made all of those points and many more throughout our summit. Now, if I may, I'd like to offer some very high-level take-home messages that arose from our summit, at least from my perspective, recognizing that there is a great wealth of knowledge and recommended actions that have been recorded in our webinar sessions. Rest assured that we will be re-examining these closely. So then, what are some of those take-home messages? What we heard: transformative change is needed to move us towards a nature-positive world through an integrated response to the twin global issues of biodiversity loss and climate change, while delivering clear societal benefits and advancing progress on the global sustainable development goals. We must get out of our issue and institutional-based silos. The point was also made that healthy ecosystems sustain healthy people and a healthy economy. It is not the other way around. Biodiversity is the foundation to the pursuit of sustainable development and a sustainable future. That was made abundantly clear by Dr. Harvey Locke, our keynote speaker in the opening session. Nature-based solutions, the focus of the summit, is much more than simply jargon. It has been well defined by highly respected international organizations like the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, the IUCN. That was affirmed by many of our opening session speakers, including Dr. Harvey Locke, Dr. Stephen Woodley, and Dr. Risa Smith. It specifically includes action to protect, sustainably manage, and restore natural and modified ecosystems that address societal challenges effectively and adaptively, simultaneously providing human well-being and biodiversity benefits. Nature-based solutions also include clear and much-needed climate benefits. We heard that nature-based solutions is not a substitute for the rapid phase-out of fossil fuels, which must continue. We must increase the protection of carbon sinks while reducing carbon sources. Nature-based solutions involves a wide range of marine, freshwater, and terrestrial ecosystems, including forests, wetlands, grasslands, and more. It is more than just planting trees, although that too is urgently needed. Nature-based solutions should be implemented with the full engagement, support, and consent of Indigenous people and local communities. And finally, nature-based solutions must provide measurable benefits for biodiversity. More specifically, we heard that protecting biodiversity-rich and carbon-dense intact ecosystems as sinks must be a priority, and most notably those ecosystems which are under imminent threat of loss. It is where the greatest immediate gains can be made to achieve our emission targets and our biodiversity targets. Presenters embrace the current national and global targets of 30% protected areas by 2030, but also recognize that the provinces and territories must be on board to achieve such targets. That includes Ontario. Others, including Harvey Locke, Stephen Woodley, and Risa Smith, noted that science indicates that the 30% target is a minimum and that 50 to 70% is likely needed for the protection of biodiversity and key carbon sinks, including our vast northern peatlands. We also heard that Indigenous protected and conserved areas, IPCAs in short, have a huge role to play, building upon true sustainable use of landscapes and waterscapes. It was also noted that the majority of biodiversity and carbon-rich lands reside on Indigenous lands. More to the point, we heard that the support and consent from Indigenous peoples, including the use of traditional knowledge, two-eyed seeing, and ethical space, is urgently needed. We must also sustainably manage the working landscape for economic and societal benefits and for enhanced carbon sequestration and biodiversity benefits. In that regard, we had excellent webinars on the role and future opportunities of forestry, agriculture, and business in mainstreaming biodiversity into planning, operations, and the supply chain, and the market benefits for having done so. There are also significant opportunities for enhancing carbon sequestration and carbon sinks on the working landscape with clear co-benefits for biodiversity. We must also invest in habitat restoration. In the human-dominated landscapes of Southern Ontario and Southern Canada, we have already lost too much habitat and are experiencing a multitude of threats to biodiversity, including severe threats to our communities from extreme weather events. We must engage in large-scale restoration, the right native species in the right places for the right reasons, while also protecting vitally important land for food production and managing the working landscape sustainably. We had superb webinar sessions exploring the current state and future restoration opportunities and priority actions for both terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems. Yet again, we are looking at restoration opportunities that provide both biodiversity and climate co-benefits. In terms of climate change, we must not only protect important carbon stores, but we must also increase the amount of carbon dioxide that has been removed from the atmosphere through the power of photosynthesis. The federal 2 billion tree program and associated efforts at enhancing grasslands and wetland restoration are excellent examples that were discussed. When it comes to habitat restoration, it all starts with the use of appropriate native plants. That also represents a growing economic opportunity with significant new jobs in the native plant industry as we build back better in a new green, ecologically sustainable economy that also has clear health and economic benefits for people. That too is an imperative as we work towards a nature positive world. We must also reduce threats. Protection and restoration will only go so far. We must also reduce threats while we work to enhance resilience. We had a great webinar focused on priority threats, such as invasive species, habitat loss, and climate change, among other threats, and what we must do to reduce such threats, including the need to reduce our ecological footprint, to be well within the biocapacity of the province and indeed the planet. Our future, yet again, depends upon it. And we need to fund. All of these nature-based solutions require significant financial investments. It also requires that biodiversity considerations be integrated into financial institutions and businesses within their financial statements, both within the context of risk management and future market opportunities. We also heard, yet again, that biodiversity needs to be recognized as a natural asset in our accounting systems. Currently, it is not recognized, undermining the value of that which sustains us, rendering it at a value of virtually zero. That must change. We had 2 webinar sessions examining the need, the opportunities, and the business case for such investments, including the need to invest in both the protection and restoration of natural infrastructure as a key part of the solution to achieve climate resilient communities while also addressing biodiversity loss. Now is the time to build back better post-COVID-19 with a green, ecologically sustainable economy which recognizes the multiple benefits of nature-based solutions. How do we do this? All of these needs for nature-based solutions will be for naught if we do not have the support of consumers and the electorate for transformative change. People need to see their connectedness and dependence upon biodiversity and be turned on to their inherent love of nature, biophilia. Perhaps more importantly, as made clear by Dr. Blair Feltmate of the Intact Center on Climate Adaptation, this is about enlightened self-interest for our health, for our safety, and for our prosperity. That is why we had webinars on engaging people, enhancing awareness of biodiversity, and integrating biodiversity into the educational curriculum. Awareness of biodiversity and its link to our health and prosperity has improved, but we need to do more. That is also why we had webinars hosted by the Emerging Leaders for Biodiversity, inspiring a new generation of impassioned biodiversity leaders. The immense challenge that we face will be to scale up priority actions with nature-based solutions to reverse the curve of biodiversity loss, address climate change, and achieve a nature-positive world. As for next steps, there is more to do as we look forward to the renewal of Ontario's biodiversity strategy to 2030. We will be taking the priority actions from our 2021 Ontario Biodiversity Summit together with the results from our State of Ontario's Biodiversity Report, the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework that's emanating out of COP15, and the Edinburgh Declaration to help inform the renewal of Ontario's biodiversity strategy to 2030. Indigenous involvement and consultation in the spirit of ethical space will be a critical part of that effort. We are seeking positive, transformative change for the benefit of biodiversity, climate, and people, and we'll be looking to you for your input, support, and future implementation action. And remember this, protecting the diversity of life on Earth, of which we are an integral part, requires broad societal consensus and participation. It is a challenge not for some of us, but for all of us. Indeed, that is both the foundation for and the spirit of the Ontario Biodiversity Council, and an underlying driver to the renewal of the Ontario Biodiversity Strategy. Thank you all.